These are Vargas turbos. The wastegate bushing pushed its way out. You can see where it's starting to crack right here too. Well, I guess the main problem was it wasn't secured with the pin, but also I thought maybe it wasn't welded like far enough out on the tab or something for it, because the other one broke right there. So this is what we're looking at over here. Because it backed out, it won't close, so they probably made poor power. I think the guy said they only had these on for like 400 miles or so. We need to insert our spiral clips. I cleaned them first before I put these in there. These compress when you put them in there, so they're pretty easy to install. It's actually pretty close. The exhaust side is just as far off as the other one is, really. Supposed to be hit right above that 4. I file all these humps right here on the deflector. See that? File those down because you don't want this to stick up. If it sticks up, it could offset it, like it could tilt your seal plate, and it can cause an issue with your piston ring. It will cause a binding problem. This is an old deflector. I've since had these revised, but I just happen to be using this one. This bearing is supposed to be a rear bearing, but I'm running out of, well, basically I'm out of these front bearings, so I'm going to just put this towards the spacer. Make sure you clean all these parts before you put them in there. The journal bearing's in there. This area has to be cut. It's already cut. It was like that when I received it, so it's made for the upgraded collar here, or spacer, I mean. And then we're going to add in the thrust bearing that I drilled. Next part is going to be the O-ring, goes right there. And then the seal plate, deflector, and piston ring seal and collar. Next parts we're putting in, we need the deflector. I had to trim it a little bit so it'd fit around that bearing. So that's why mine looks like that. Otherwise the seal plate wouldn't sit down, so you gotta really pay attention. So we need this piece, our collar, and our front seal. I've already cleaned all these parts to make this video faster. This might be the wrong, oh, this is the one I needed. That was a TDO3 one I cut by mistake. But you can see I cut that one. That'll slide right through. Put some oil on that. Most important part, just making sure everything's super clean. I always rotate this around so I can see the front seal gap. Make sure you're closing it in and not pinching it, bending it. This has to be fully in the pocket. I like to put the seal gap up at the top. So let's see where that is. It's right here, so I'm just going to rotate the deflector down. The seal does not spin, it's stationary, so you can choose where you want the gap to be. I choose the top because that's less likely to leak oil if you have an issue where you have the oil level start to fill up in the cartridge. Could be an oil drain blockage. If you block off the crankcase vent, something like that, it'll be less likely to leak out. It'll be less likely to leak out as soon. If you have that issue, it's going to eventually leak once it gets pressurized. We're gonna put this in there. I'll put it up at the top. I'll flip it around, put the rear bearing in. The way I put this in, the side with the cut faces the turbine. Just make sure you clean them. Clean your tools, clean your hands. Make sure it spins good, no debris in there. The front piston ring is a TD04. The rear rings are not normal sizes. They're very similar to TD03, except the width. The width of these are 49 thousandths. The width of the OEM TD03 seals is 47 thousandths. That clearance makes a huge difference. It's going to leak if you use those seals. I had to reuse these because that's all I have. We're just going to inspect these. So if you look at them closely, you want to make sure they're very square. There's no wear on the sides. This one has a little bit of wear. Wait, no, this one does. This one has a little bit of wear right there. Since I cannot replace this and all the other sides look good, I'm going to have this one on the inside because it will stay cooler, and I'll have the worn side in between here, so it'd be less likely to leak. If I put it on the outside towards the turbine wheel, it will get much hotter since it's facing the exhaust side. Facing it towards the inside of the bearing housing will keep it cooler because that's where the oil supply is closer to the oil supply. Where it's worn, another reason why I'm putting it on the inside is these seals are stationary, so that seal area in between here will never wear. They just sit there. The only parts that can wear are the outsides. These are not supposed to rotate. Otherwise, these seals look like they're in great shape besides that one that's slightly worn. These seals also need to be 180 degrees apart. I'm going to put the gap ends on the sides. I wouldn't want it at the bottom, but I would want it at the top. But because I can't have top and bottom and it needs to be 180, I'm going to do it right here at the sides. Feeler gauge and just wedge it in there. That one's 7. I'll show you what this looks like.
What? 60, 64?
It's a
HX35?
So on these where they wear, you can see the outer edge is not worn. That's commonly because the turbine doesn't ride there. The seal sticks up a little bit. So if I put this with the worn area in the center, it should restore all the tolerances. The only thing that I'm concerned about though is when I took measurements that the seals should be bigger. The seals should be about 50 thousandths rather than 49. I think they should be 50 and a quarter thousandths each. That's based on the gap of between the seal and the turbine wheels groove width. I got my seals. I'm going to put them 180 degrees apart.